am Elias Thorne. I am 68 years old and I have just been uninvited for my son's Christmas. Dad, it's just, we're not really expecting you this year. Marcus's voice was thin, nervous, like a man cornered in a shadowed alley, his breath catching on unspoken regrets. Through the phone, I could hear her Lydia, my daughter-in-law, her words slicing through the air like a chilled wind. Just tell him, Marcus, my parents are coming. It's formal. Formal. That's the code they use when they mean I'm too rough around the edges, too worn by life to fit their polished world. I stood in the middle of the crowded plaza, the air thick with the artificial scent of cinnamon and synthetic pine, clutching a $200 Interstellar Explorer kit for my granddaughter Alara. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, pressing down like an unrelenting headache, while distant carols droned on their melodies, warped by the hum of shoppers' hurried footsteps. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just felt that old familiar chill seep into my joints, a deep, bone-aching cold that whispered of years of quiet endurance. I understand, son, I said, and I hung up. I placed the Explorer kit back on the shelf, its plastic edges sharp against my calloused fingers, a silent surrender. I walked out of the store, the automatic doors whooshing shut behind me like a final judgment, got into my old pickup truck, and drove home. That was 2 days ago. This morning I woke up to 69 missed calls. It turns out Marcus might not have been expecting me, but he was definitely expecting the $4,000 I send him on the first of every month. Before you hear the rest of this story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And please like and subscribe if you've ever had to show someone your true strength after they underestimated you. The lights at the bustling Evergreen Plaza were blinding, casting harsh shadows that danced across the tiled floors like restless ghosts. Christmas music blared from overhead speakers, the same timeless tunes recycled through decades, now crooned by fresh voices that evoked a pang of nostalgia mixed with sorrow. It always made me think of Clara. My wife Clara adored Christmas. She thrived in the chaos, the clamor, the sharp aroma of fresh evergreen boughs that permeated our modest cottage. After she passed 12 years ago, I strove to maintain that spark for our granddaughter, Ilara. Ilara was the only one who truly saw me anymore, her eyes unclouded by judgment. She didn't mind my weathered truck. She didn't care that my clothes were from the local thrift. She just craved my tales of the old homestead stories whispered in the dim glow of evening lamplight. She was fascinated by the stars, a brilliant, inquisitive child. She inherited that from Clara. That's why I was here in the priciest shopping center in Willow Creek, gripping a toy that cost more than my first tractor payment back in 1982. It was an intricate model of a galactic Voyager probe, its details gleaming under the store's stark illumination. Her face would illuminate like a dawn sky when she unwrapped it. This gift wasn't merely a plaything, it was my fragile tether to a family slipping further into the distance, the weight of it pressing against my chest like an unspoken plea. I was standing in the checkout line, wallet in hand, the conveyor belt humming monotonously, when my phone vibrated a low buzz that cut through the ambient din like a warning. It was Marcus. I smiled faintly, imagining he was calling to confirm my arrival time on Christmas Eve. I always arrived on the 24th to assist Alara with assembling her grand present, our hands working in tandem amid scattered tools and laughter. "Hey, son, I'm just grabbing Alara's gift. You should see this thing. It's Dad." "Hey, you got a minute?" His voice was taut, strained, laced with an undercurrent of dread that made my grip tighten on the phone. I stepped out of the line, allowing a harried woman laden with overflowing bags to pass her perfume, cloying in the confined space. The music receded into a muffled haze. "What's wrong, Marcus? You sound exhausted." "Nothing's wrong, Dad. It's just about Christmas." I heard a sharp metallic voice in the background. It was Lydia. "Are you talking to him, Marcus?" "Just tell him. My parents will be here any minute." Marcus sighed, a heavy exhalation that carried the burden of divided loyalties like a rope fraying under too much strain. "Dad, look. Lydia's parents, Helena and Victor. They're driving in from the East Coast for the week." "That's great, son," I said, forcing cheer into my tone, though it felt hollow echoing in my mind. I knew he needed me to be upbeat. "I haven't seen them since the wedding. It'll be nice to catch up." "No, Dad. That's the thing." He faltered words, tumbling awkwardly, his dishonesty evident in every stutter. It's it's going to be formal, you know, like really formal. Crisp linens, fine spirits. The sort of affair well, you hate that stuff. I felt the chill begin in my gut, spreading like frost on a winter pane. A visceral reminder of exclusion. I don't hate stuff, Marcus. I hate being treated like an outsider. I can don a tie. I still have the one from. It's not just that, Dad. He interrupted, his words rushed defensive. There's not really enough room. Not enough room. The phrase lingered heavy as lead in that expansive 6,000 square foot estate on the outskirts of Willow Creek. The one with the guest suite. The one with the banquet hall that could seat 14. Marcus, just say it, Lydia yelled, her voice nearer now, cutting like a blade through the ether. It's fine. Marcus inhaled sharply, as if bracing for a plunge into icy waters, his hesitation palpable even through the line. Dad, we're not expecting you for Christmas this year. It's better this way. It's less pressure on everyone. My fingers clenched around the Explorer Kit's box, the rigid plastic biting into my skin, a sharp sting that mirrored the ache in my chest. Not expecting me, I echoed. It wasn't a query, it was an acknowledgement. The closing of a door. Yeah, he said, relief flooding his tone now that the deed was done. We'll drop by your cottage, maybe the week after New Year's or something. Just mail Alara's gift. Okay. It's just easier that way. Mail the gift like a distant relative, like an forgotten elder no one bothers to see. The color leached from my face, but my voice remained steady, composed. It astonished me. I understand, son. You do. Oh, great. That's great, Dad. Thanks for understanding. Look, I gotta go. They're here. Bye. The call ended abruptly, leaving a void filled only by the plaza's cacophony. I lingered there for a full minute, perhaps two. The crowd swirling around me in a blur of festive reds and greens, their expressions alight with holiday fervor, arms burdened with glittering packages. I gazed at the Explorer Kit in my grasp. $199 plus tax. I recalled Marcus's wedding 12 years ago. It was an opulent event at a secluded lodge I'd never visited before. I had felt misplaced then, too, amid the crystal and silk. Lydia's parents, Victor and Helena Langford, had cornered me near the sparkling fountain, their attire impeccable, exuding an aura of inherited privilege from their coastal enclave. And you are, Helena, had inquired, her gaze appraising my borrowed suit with subtle disdain. I'm Elias Thorne, Marcus's father. Oh. Her smile was luminous, yet fragile like thin ice. Marcus is simply exceptional. So driven. He gets that from, well, he's just exceptional. And what do you do for a living, Elias? I recognized the ploy. I'd encountered it countless times. I'm retired, ma'am, I replied courteously. Worked at the local mill for 42 years. Victor Langford slapped my shoulder a bit too forcefully, his hand lingering like a patronizing weight. A blue-collar stalwart. Commendable. Steady labor. A reliable pension, no doubt. His eyes brimmed with condescension, a pity that wounded deeper than outright scorn. They viewed a humble old mill worker, a benign, obsolete figure from their son-in-law's modest origins. Marcus had witnessed the exchange. He rushed over his cheeks, flushed, ushering them aside. Dad, why don't you go grab a drink? He was mortified. My son was mortified by me. I overheard him apologizing to Victor later by the bar. I'm sorry, Marcus murmured. He's just traditional. He doesn't mingle much. I had overlooked it for Clara's sake, for Harmony's illusion. But standing here in Evergreen Plaza, being informed I was not anticipated, I realized overlooking it had been an error. I had permitted them to label me. I had allowed him to diminish me. I returned to the cashier I'd abandoned. She was a young woman around 22, her eyes shadowed with fatigue from the relentless holiday rush. Changed your mind? She asked, already extending her hand for the box. Yes, ma'am, I said, setting the Explorer Kit down with care, as if relinquishing a piece of myself. I've changed my mind about a lot of things. I exited the plaza. I ignored the towering holiday tree, its lights twinkling mockingly. The music faded to mere static. I climbed into my truck. It's a 1995 Chevy Silverado. The paint on the hood is flaking, and the driver's door creaks like weary bones when it swings open. Marcus despises this truck. Lydia refuses to step inside it. It's a rust bucket on wheels, Dad. Marcus always said it's humiliating, but the engine runs true. I maintain what counts. I ignited the ignition. The motor growled to life, a loyal rumble that grounded me. I pulled out of that immaculate affluent parking lot past the sleek electric sedans and luxury SUVs and headed west on the rural highway. I drove away from the gleaming spires and manicured estates back to my community, back to the rolling hills of Willow Creek, back to my modest two-bedroom cottage that Marcus and Lydia hadn't visited in over a year. They believed I was destitute. They believed I was uncomplicated. They believed I was a harmless old mill worker they could brush aside with a call because I wasn't refined enough for their elevated circle. I parked the truck, the gravel crunching under the tires like brittle leaves, walked up to my cottage, and settled at my old oak desk, the one inherited from my father, its surface scarred from decades of use. They were about to discover just how mistaken they were. The cottage complex carried the scent of pine sap and distant wood smoke. It always did. I trudged down the narrow, twilight-dimmed path, the ground uneven under my boots. Unit 4C home. I turned the key, the same tarnished brass one I'd used for 35 years, and stepped inside. The quiet assaulted me first, a profound hush that amplified every creak of the floorboards. It's a neat space, an orderly one. Clara, my late wife, always demanded order, but it's compact. The armchair is plush, yet the upholstery frays at the edges. The TV is an outdated model, perhaps 28 inches. It is the cottage of a retired mill worker. It is the cottage of a man who avoids conflict. It is the cottage of a man they assumed they could discard. I hung my coat on the peg by the door, the fabric whispering against the wood. Her photograph rests on the small stand beside it. Clara. She's beaming in the image, a candid shot from our excursion to the lakeside 25 years ago. Her eyes sparkle as if harboring a private amusement the world can't share. I traced my thumb over the simple pine frame, feeling the grain beneath my skin. "Well, Clara," I murmured. My voice resonated unnaturally in the stillness. "You heard him, I suppose, not expecting me. Our son, our Marcus." I moved to the kitchen, my steps leaden, echoing faintly. I poured a glass of well water. I wasn't thirsty, but the ritual steadied me. "He's just like them now, darling," I said to her photo from the kitchen, the words hanging in the air like fog. "He's just like those Langfords. He's so consumed with dazzling those stiff, pallid folks from the coast that he forgot his roots. He forgot who raised him." I braced against the counter, the cool laminate pressing into my palms. "He's ashamed. Of me, of this cottage, of this hamlet, of the mill shifts I feigned for 42 years. I emitted a brief acrid chuckle that rasped like gravel. He's mortified by a facade I crafted to shield him. And this is the gratitude I receive. We're not expecting you. This is what our boy has absorbed, Clara. This is what he's evolved into." I drained the water, placed the glass down with a clink that reverberated. The sorrow from the drive had evaporated. The journey home had scorched it away. Now I felt only a stark chill. I felt a lucidity absent for ages, sharp as a winter dawn. I proceeded to the den past the frayed armchair and faced the far wall. A landscape hangs there. It's not an original. It's a reproduction I acquired at a county fair in the 90s. A plain depiction of the Willow Creek horizon at twilight, the hills undulating under a fading sun. Marcus and Lydia always loathed it. "This piece is gloomy, Dad." Marcus would gripe, his brow furrowed in distaste. "It just seems tacky," Lydia would chime in, ever eager to concur. I reached up my finger steady, despite the years, and gently removed the print from its modest hook. The wallpaper behind was bleached a paler hue of taupe, save for the precise, darker rectangle where the image had shielded it. And centered in that rectangle was a compact black keypad embedded seamlessly into the wall. My digits, roughened by labor, danced over the buttons. I entered the code 723, Clara's birthday. July 23rd. A resonant click resounded in the room, and a panel of the drywall swung ajar. It wasn't a vast vault. It wasn't crammed with ingots or bundles of currency. That's for tales. That's novice fare. This vault contained my authentic existence. I delved inside and extracted a substantial, weighty, leather-bound tome. On the spine, etched in faded gilt, were 3 words, Thorn Heritage Ventures, LLC. This is the reality. I was never solely a mill worker. That was employment I assumed for the stability for the medical coverage when Marcus was young. It was a straightforward, honorable vocation, a noble one, and it served as the ideal veil. It permitted me to traverse the town unnoticed. It allowed me to observe. My father, Harlan Thorne, wasn't a mill worker. He was an entrepreneur. He was a pioneer. He acquired acreage in Willow Creek when no one desired it back when boundaries were etched around our districts. He purchased plots in the Old Valley Quarter. He bought modest holdings in Oak Ridge Hollow. He acquired swaths of earth now valued at millions. He bequeathed it all to me, and I never divested. I expanded. I opened the tome, leaf after leaf brimming with my precise, meticulous script. Estates, commercial rentals, housing developments in the town center, a modest warehouse near the tech park. I wasn't merely a proprietor, I was a financier, a discreet one. Marcus, he presumed Thorn Heritage Ventures was some nominal entity I'd established for my scant retirement fund. He never inquired. He was too preoccupied with his mortification over my truck to ponder what I occupied my days with post-retirement. He never questioned how his elite academy tuition was settled in full. He never pondered how I'd furnished the initial deposit for his first dwelling, long before Lydia and her critical, refined parents entered the scene. He simply accepted. He took, and he never, ever probed. I reached back into the vault and withdrew another dossier. This one was slimmer, more recent. The tab's label read, Marcus Thorne Outskirts Manor. I regarded the dossier. That stark lucidity was morphing into a gradual, smoldering blaze heat rising in my veins like embers stirred. My son, my ambitious, imprudent, thankless son. He deemed me the encumbrance. He deemed me the unassuming, elderly man he could sideline for Christmas because I didn't align with his novel, elegant existence. He had no inkling. He had no inkling that I was the financier. He had no inkling that the anonymous venture group securing his $1.2 million mortgage was me. He was residing in my manor. He was captivating his in-laws with my holdings, and he just informed me I wasn't welcome on my own terrain. Oh, Clara, I said, sealing the sturdy vault door with a muted, decisive thud that echoed like a verdict. You always said he had caviar aspirations on a soup allowance. Turns out he doesn't even have an allowance. He's just been sipping my caviar all along. I replaced the landscape on the wall. I aligned it meticulously until it was flawless. The modest Willow Creek vista gazed back at me, a flawless disguise. I seated myself at my old oak desk. I lifted the phone. It was time to contact my attorney. It was time to contact Harlan Jr. Marcus thought I was unassuming. He thought I was impoverished. He thought I was feeble. He was about to learn just how costly it was to undervalue his father. He was about to grasp the true essence of the word formal. I walked past the frayed armchair, past the photograph of Clara, and stood before the modest landscape of the Willow Creek horizon. I lifted the print from the hook. The keypad contrasted darkly against the bleached taupe wall. I inputted the code 723, Clara's birthday. The resonant click of the vault, unlocking, reverberated in the compact, hushed room. I reached inside and extracted the dossier. It was substantial, hefty, bound in deep navy vinyl. The label produced on my vintage labeler was straightforward. Outskirts Manor M. Thorne. I carried it to my small kitchen table, sat down, and opened it. The initial page was a photograph, a splendid, radiant stone estate. 5 bedrooms, a sweeping driveway towering maples, a $1.2 million house in the core of Willow Creek's elite enclave. The district where long-standing Willow Creek fortune resides. The sort of district I was never intended to glimpse, let alone possess. I recall the day Marcus and Lydia acquired this house 6 years ago. They hosted a lavish welcoming gathering. It was the last occasion I'd encountered Helena and Victor Lydia's parents before this Christmas. They positioned by the granite hearth clasping champagne flutes. I was near the hors d'oeuvres, and I overheard Helena chuckle. "It's a beginner's chateau," she remarked to another attendee, her tone audible enough for me. It's quite the abode for Marcus. We were stunned he secured the funding. I mean, with his upbringing, I just hope he's not stretching too thin. I recall merely smiling, that unassuming, innocuous, retired mill worker smile. He's a clever lad, I said, passing them. He knows how to balance. I flipped the page in the dossier. What I didn't disclose to Helena, what I never revealed to anyone, was that Marcus hadn't obtained the funding. He had been denied by 3 separate lenders. He was already submerged in obligations from the nuptials, striving to match Lydia and her kin. He had approached me defeated, humiliated, petrified. She would depart if he couldn't furnish the existence she anticipated. The subsequent page in the dossier was a transfer verification. My transfer. $1.2 million. Cash. I didn't simply gift him the house. That's not how you forge a man. That's how you forge a reliant. No, I executed it astutely. I became the lender. I established a private mortgage via my LLC Thorn Heritage Ventures. I composed the documents. I devised a repayment plan. As far as Marcus and Lydia knew, they were remitting their $4,000 monthly mortgage to some anonymous private financing entity headquartered in Nevada. They never troubled to investigate further. They didn't realize they were remitting to me. I did it to safeguard him. I did it to bestow the constancy I never possessed. I granted him a 0% interest rate. It was a boon. It was my method of nurturing my son discreetly from the obscurity while he enacted his high-flying commerce charade. And he just informed me I wasn't anticipated for Christmas. He was dwelling in an estate I owned, and he was abashed by my truck. He was so engrossed in dazzling his in-laws that he overlooked who clutched the title. I turned to the final page of the dossier. It was the remittance record. My own meticulous handwritten record. I've always favored ink and parchment. Column 1 due date. Column 2 amount remitted. Column 3 remaining. I traced my finger down the amount remitted column. $4,000. $4,000, $4,000, $4,000. Then the notation ceased. The entry for October 1st was vacant. The entry for November 1st was vacant. The entry for December 1st, mere weeks past, was also vacant. My breath hitched in my throat. 92 days. He hadn't remitted. He wasn't grappling to remit. He simply halted. He halted, remitting his mortgage, yet he possessed sufficient funds to orchestrate a formal Christmas, to acquire his wife novel luxuries, to sustain his existence of deceptions. He just presumed the old man, the unassuming mill worker, wouldn't detect. Or perhaps he just didn't concern himself. I sealed the dossier. The snap of the vinyl cover closing was the sole noise in the room. The charade was concluded. I lifted the phone. I no longer felt sorrowful. I no longer felt furious. I just felt concluded. Harlan Jr., I said when my attorney answered Elias Merry Christmas. What's occurring, Harlan Jr.? I need you to retrieve the dossier on the outskirts property, the one under the Heritage Venture. I need you to inform me the last remittance date. I already knew the response, but I required to hear it. I required the ultimate impetus. I required to know this wasn't merely a father being wounded. I required to know this was commerce. And it was. I walked past the frayed armchair, past the photograph of Clara, and stood before the modest landscape of the Willow Creek horizon. I lifted the print from the hook. The keypad contrasted darkly against the bleached taupe wall. I inputted the code 723, Clara's birthday. The resonant click of the vault unlocking reverberated in the compact, hushed room. I reached inside and extracted the dossier. It was substantial, hefty, bound in deep navy vinyl. The label produced on my vintage labeler was straightforward. Outskirts Manor, M. Thorn. I carried it to my small kitchen table, sat down, and opened it. The initial page was a photograph. A splendid, radiant stone estate, 5 bedrooms, a sweeping driveway, towering maples, a $1.2 million house in the core of Willow Creek's elite enclave, the district where long-standing Willow Creek fortune resides. The sort of district I was never intended to glimpse, let alone possess. I recall the day Marcus and Lydia acquired this house 6 years ago. They hosted a lavish, welcoming gathering. It was the last occasion I'd encountered Helena and Victor, Lydia's parents, before this Christmas. They positioned by the granite hearth clasping champagne flutes. I was near the hors d'oeuvres and I overheard Helena chuckle. It's a beginner's chateau, she remarked to another attendee, her tone audible enough for me. It's quite the abode for Marcus. We were stunned he secured the funding. I mean, with his upbringing. I just hope he's not stretching too thin. I recall merely smiling, that unassuming, innocuous retired mill worker smile. He's a clever lad, I said, passing them. He knows how to balance. I flipped the page in the dossier. What I didn't disclose to Helena, what I never revealed to anyone, was that Marcus hadn't obtained the funding. He had been denied by 3 separate lenders. He was already submerged in obligations from the nuptials striving to match Lydia and her kin. He had approached me, defeated, humiliated, petrified. She would depart if he couldn't furnish the existence she anticipated. The subsequent page in the dossier was a transfer verification. My transfer. $1.2 million. Cash. I didn't simply gift him the house. That's not how you forge a man. That's how you forge a Reliant. No, I executed it astutely. I became the lender. I established a private mortgage via my LLC Thorn Heritage Ventures. I composed the documents. I devised a repayment plan. As far as Marcus and Lydia knew, they were remitting their $4,000 monthly mortgage to some anonymous private financing entity headquartered in Nevada. They never troubled to investigate further. They didn't realize they were remitting to me. I did it to safeguard him. I did it to bestow the constancy I never possessed. I granted him a 0% interest rate. It was a boon. It was my method of nurturing my son discreetly from the obscurity while he enacted his high-flying commerce charade. And he just informed me I wasn't anticipated for Christmas. He was dwelling in an estate I owned, and he was abashed by my truck. He was so engrossed in dazzling his in-laws that he overlooked who clutched the title. I turned to the final page of the dossier. It was the remittance record. My own meticulous, handwritten record. I've always favored ink and parchment. Column 1 due date, column 2 amount remitted, column 3 remaining. I traced my finger down the amount remitted column. $4,000, $4,000, $4,000, $4,000. Then the notation ceased. The entry for October 1st was vacant. The entry for November 1st was vacant. The entry for December 1st, mere weeks past, was also vacant. My breath hitched in my throat. 92 days. He hadn't remitted. He wasn't grappling to remit. He simply halted. He halted, remitting his mortgage, yet he possessed sufficient funds to orchestrate a formal Christmas, to acquire his wife novel luxuries to sustain his existence of deceptions. He just presumed the old man the unassuming mill worker wouldn't detect, or perhaps he just didn't concern himself. I sealed the dossier. The snap of the vinyl cover closing was the sole noise in the room. The charade was concluded. I lifted the phone. I no longer felt sorrowful. I no longer felt furious. I just felt concluded. Harlan Jr., I said when my attorney answered Elias Merry Christmas. What's occurring, Harlan Jr.? I need you to retrieve the dossier on the outskirts property, the one under the Heritage Venture. I need you to inform me the last remittance date. I already knew the response, but I required to hear it. I required the ultimate impetus. I required to know this wasn't merely a father being wounded. I required to know this was commerce, and it was. I need you to verify the remittance status for the outskirts property immediately. I placed the phone down on the kitchen counter. The plastic was cool against my skin. Harlan Jr. said he'd return the call in an hour. An hour can stretch like eternity when you're 68 years old. It's an even lengthier span when you're awaiting to discover if your sole son is merely an ungrateful dolt or if he's a commonplace pilferer. I moved to the stove to brew coffee. My hands were firm. That surprised me. I wasn't trembling. I wasn't even irate. Not truly. I was just chilled. It was the same chill I experienced 12 years ago at the clinic when the physician informed me Clara was departed. A chilled lucidity. The variety where the world ceases humming and you perceive everything, every minor fissure, precisely as it exists. The coffee maker bubbled its steam, rising in lazy curls that fogged the window pane. It's an aged apparatus. A brewmaster from 1990, perhaps 1991. Marcus always detested it. Dad, for heaven's sake, just get a single-serve brewer, he'd say every rare visit. It's the modern era. This relic is ancient. But I favored this old machine. It functioned. It was genuine. Genuineness. That's why I orchestrated all this. That's why I concealed the fortune. I poured the dark brew into my mug, the one inscribed World's Best Dad on the side. Marcus presented it to me when he was 9. He'd hoarded his pocket money for 4 weeks to purchase it at the fair. He was so elated, his posture straight observing me unwrap it. I regarded the mug, the faded lettering, a testament to faded bonds. Where did that lad vanish? I sipped the coffee. It was acerbic, just as I preferred its heat contrasting the chill within. I knew why I'd veiled the wealth. My father Harlan, he constructed what he did with raw determination. He procured land in Willow Creek when pale faces were fleeing Willow Creek, not toward it. He bought lots in the Old Valley Quarter for mere coins. He bought modest properties in Oak Ridge Hollow when they were naught but mud paths. He instructed me that wealth is an instrument, not an accolade. He instructed me that a man who inherits riches doesn't comprehend its gravity. I desired Marcus to comprehend the gravity. I desired him to forge his own path. I didn't want him to be the flaccid, indulged offspring of a prosperous man. I wanted him to be the resilient, proud grandson of a pioneer. So I fabricated the deception. Elias Thorne, the mill worker. 42 years, same grind, toiling in the Willow Creek humidity. It was a decent pension, a small cottage, sufficient. It was a genuine existence. And I provided Marcus all he required, but I never provided what he merely craved. I settled his schooling at Ridgewood Academy in cash. I ensured he had fine attire, nourishing meals, but I compelled him to labor for his first vehicle. I made him secure a summer position, and he did. He was a fine youth. He was anchored. He was my son. And then he encountered Lydia. I gazed out the window of my modest cottage. Below on the lane, 2 youngsters were chasing one another, their giggles resonating off the wooden fences. Lydia didn't originate from this realm. She hailed from that sleek, subdued, pale realm on the coast where folks converse in hushed tones and appraise you by the vehicle you operate. She entered Marcus's life, and abruptly everything he possessed wasn't adequate. His dwelling wasn't prestigious. His credential wasn't elite. His father was a mill worker. I witnessed the transformation in him. It commenced subtly. He ceased bringing his companions to the cottage. He ceased addressing me as Dad in her presence. He began referring to me as my father. My father, he's retired. My father, he lives modestly. He became mortified. Mortified of this cottage, mortified of this hamlet, mortified of the roughened hands that had funded his elite academy education. He commenced pursuing. He had to possess the correct attire, the correct title, the correct manner. When he approached me about the manor in the outskirts, he was frantic. He wasn't soliciting aid. He was soliciting a salvation. He said, "Dad, I can't forfeit her. This is the existence she merits." Even then, I couldn't merely bestow it. I thought I could still impart a lesson. So I became his lender. I provided the $1.2 million loan at 0%. I thought, let him repay it. Let him sense the accountability. Let him accumulate equity. Let him feel like he merited it. I thought I was instructing him self-sufficiency. I glanced at the phone resting silent on the counter, but I wasn't instructing him anything. I was facilitating him. I was funding his shame. I was compensating for the honor of being concealed away, of being barred from Christmas, because I wasn't refined enough for his novel, opulent existence. I was the bedrock of the very manner he was utilizing to dazzle the folks who disparaged me. And now he wasn't even remitting me. The phone rang. The clamor startled me, causing coffee to splash onto the counter. I mopped it up, inhaled deeply. It was Harlan Jr. I answered on the first ring. My hand wasn't trembling anymore. It was firm. "Speak to me, Harlan Jr." I lifted the phone. My hand was firm. Harlan Jr. Elias. His tone was all commerce, no Merry Christmas. I knew immediately. I posed the query. The solitary word lingered in the air of my modest, quiet kitchen. There was a pause. I heard the rustle of documents on his end, and the last remittance received by Thorne Heritage Ventures was on September 15th. I glanced at the calendar on my wall, a complimentary one from the local co-op. It was December 22nd, September 15th. I calculated. He missed October 1st. He missed November 1st. He missed December 1st. My son was 92 days overdue. 92 days, I uttered aloud. It wasn't an inquiry. 92 days, Elias Harlan Jr. affirmed. He's in substantial breach. Legally, the escalation provision in your agreement is now engaged. You have the authority to require full payment, or well, you know what you can execute. I did know. But my thoughts weren't on the agreement. It was on an image Marcus had shared on his social feed just last week. It was Lydia positioned in that sweeping driveway I own. She was shrieking with her hands over her mouth, gazing at a new vehicle. A pristine white luxury crossover. A colossal, absurd red ribbon adorned the hood. The inscription read, "Surprised my Empress. You merit it all." He posted that he acquired that vehicle, while he was already 2.5 months behind on remunerating his father. He possessed money for a $60,000 vehicle, but he couldn't remit the zero-interest mortgage I granted him to maintain his family in a manner they couldn't sustain. The chill I felt earlier solidified into something substantial. It solidified into my bones like steel. This wasn't a lapse. This wasn't a man omitting to dispatch a payment. This was a decision. This was a declaration. This was Marcus examining the invoice from Thorn Heritage Ventures, a firm he was too indolent to even search, and resolving it wasn't significant. He thought it was just some impersonal corporation. He didn't know it was his father. He didn't care enough to ascertain. And then the other aspect struck me. The Christmas call. He didn't just bar me. He barred me after he had already ceased remitting me for 3 months. He wasn't repelling me because he was abashed. He was repelling me because he was culpable. He didn't want the man he was actively pilfering from seated at his formal Christmas banquet. He didn't want to confront my gaze. He and Lydia and her stiff judgmental parents were intending to consume lavish fare and quaff champagne, all while residing under a roof they hadn't compensated for. My roof. Elias Harlan Jr. said, shattering the quiet. "Are you there? I'm here, Harlan Jr.," I said. My voice was altered. The warmth had vanished. The pain had vanished. All that remained was the 68-year-old man who had erected an empire from his father's earth parcels. All that remained was Harlan Thorne's son. He's 92 days in breach. I declared not as a casualty, but as a creditor. Yes, Elias, that's a grave violation of your private loan pact. It's not just tardy, it's a total failure to remit. I see. I looked at the photograph of Clara on my table, her vibrant, mirthful eyes. I contemplated the deception I had lived to shield him, to fortify him. And I realized I hadn't shielded him. I had rendered him frail. I had rendered him entitled. He thought I was just an unassuming old mill worker. He thought I was someone he could disregard. He thought I was a load to be administered and kept distant from his novel, impressive kin. Harlan Jr., I said, my voice as chilled and distinct as the glass in my hand. It's time to instruct my son about commerce. It's time to instruct him about repercussions. What do you wish to do, Elias? We can dispatch a cautionary missive. We can attempt to bargain. No, I said, no more cautions. He's had 92 days of cautions. He's had a lifetime of them. I want you to ascertain where his funds are directed. I want to know everything. I want to know about the luxury crossover. I want to know about his occupation. I want to know about Lydia's $30 gourmet salad she's always displaying images of. I want to know precisely who and what I am contending with. Elias, that's a comprehensive inquiry. It will be costly. I don't care. I said, find out. Find out everything. He thinks I'm a load. He's about to discover I'm his bedrock. And he's about to discover what transpires when that bedrock fractures. Harlan Jr. disconnected. I stood there in the kitchen, the handset heavy in my palm before I returned it to the base. 92 days. The words just lingered there in the quiet of my modest cottage. 92 days. That signified he missed October. He missed November. He missed December. For a moment, my mind couldn't comprehend it. Was he in distress? Did he forfeit his position? My initial impulse, the paternal in me, was to experience a surge of concern. I should contact him. I should inquire what's amiss. I should drive there, verify on him, verify on Ilara. Then I recollected. I recollected the image Ilara had displayed me on her small device just last week. Her mother Lydia was positioned in that sweeping driveway that I own. Her hands were covering her mouth, her eyes wide, shrieking with that contrived astonishment I'd come to identify. In front of her was a brand new $70,000 white luxury crossover. It had a colossal, absurd red ribbon on the hood. Marcus's inscription read, "Surprised my Empress. You merit it all." He composed that he expended that money. He posed for that image while he was already 2.5 months behind on remunerating his mortgage. The concern in my chest dissipated. It was supplanted by something else, something chilled, something substantial. He hadn't omitted to remit. He wasn't in distress. He had selected. He selected to acquire a $70,000 status emblem instead of remitting the $4,000 mortgage. He selected to impress his wife, to impress her critical pale-faced parents from the coast, rather than honor the pact he had with me. The disrespect of it. It was utter. It was profound. He hadn't just missed a remittance, he had spat in my face. He had examined the invoice from Thorn Heritage Ventures, a company he was too lazy, too haughty to even search. And he resolved it wasn't important. He thought he was defrauding some impersonal firm. He didn't know he was defrauding his father. He didn't care enough to ascertain. And then the other aspect struck me, the aspect that really twisted the blade the Christmas call. He didn't just bar me. He barred me after he had already ceased remitting me. He wasn't repelling me just because he was abashed by his millworker father. He was repelling me because he was culpable. He didn't want the man he was actively pilfering from seated at his formal Christmas banquet. He didn't want to have to confront my gaze. He and Lydia and her parents, they were all intending to sit in my house at my banquet table, quaffing expensive champagne that my unpaid mortgage was financing. And they were going to chuckle about how refined they were. I felt the fury ascend. It wasn't the hot fury of a youthful man. It was a chilled, gradual, blazing fury. The fury of a man who has been patient for 68 years. The fury of a man who has been silent for too long. I thought of Clara. I thought of her laboring 2 positions when we were young. I thought of my father Harlan, who acquired the land I now owned when people of our hue weren't supposed to own anything but their own tribulations. I had erected an empire from that earth, and I did it in silence. I did it to shield my son from the venom of easy wealth. And what had he done? He had become a deceiver, a pilferer, a dolt. I walked to the window. I looked down at my old '95 Chevy Silverado. The flaking paint, the dent in the fender. Humiliating, he called it. "You don't know what humiliation is, son," I murmured to the vacant room, "but you're about to learn." I lifted the phone. My hand was not trembling. It was firm. It was the hand of a man who was done being a father and was now prepared to be a creditor. I dialed Harlan Jr.'s number. "Harlan Jr., it's me again, Elias. It's not sufficient to know he's tardy." "Harlan Jr.?" I interrupted him. "It's not sufficient. I need to know why. I need to know everything. He just acquired his wife a $70,000 luxury crossover. I want to know where that money originated. I want to know if he even has an occupation or if that's just another one of his deceptions. I want to know about her. I want to know about her expenditures. I want to know every iota of debt she's in. I want a complete portrait Harlan Jr. I want to know precisely who and what I am contending with." There was a silence on Harlan Jr.'s end. "Elias," he finally said, his voice low, "that's a full private inquiry. It will be costly." "I don't care about costly," I said, my voice like frost. "Hire Nadia Reed. She's the premier, isn't she?" "Hire her. Ascertain everything. He thinks I'm a load. He's about to discover I'm his bedrock. And he's about to discover what transpires when that bedrock fractures." Harlan Jr. didn't call. 2 days later, a slender, professional-appearing young woman I'd never seen before rapped on my cottage door. She donned a crisp suit and didn't grin. "Mr. Thorne." This is from Mr. Thorne Jr." She proffered a thick 9x12 manila envelope. No return address, just my name scrawled on the front. She pivoted and departed without another utterance. I closed the door, engaging the lock. I stood in my entryway for a moment, just gauging the envelope in my hand. It was heavy, heavy with verities I wasn't certain I desired to know. I went to the kitchen. I didn't brew coffee. I poured myself 2 fingers of whiskey. I don't imbibe often, but I had a feeling this was an occasion. I sat at my small kitchen table, the one I'd dined at for 35 years, and I opened the clasp. Inside was a professionally bound report. The cover read Confidential Investigation. Subjects Marcus and Lydia Thorne. Investigator Nadia Reed. I opened it. The first section was about Lydia. It was 7 pages long, complete with photographs. Nadia was adept. She was meticulous. I saw images of Lydia, not the beaming socialite she portrayed online. I saw her in her new luxury crossover parked outside upscale lounges in the town center. I saw her emerging from upscale boutiques carrying bags from high-end designers, from luxury outlets, from exclusive labels. Then came the credit card statements. Nadia had obtained them. I didn't inquire how. Premier card. A balance of $38,000. National Visa $22,000. Boutique store card $16,000. $76,000. $76,000 in debt just on her personal cards. I examined the charges. $5,500 for a handbag. $1,300 for a pair of designer heels I'd glimpsed in a catalog. $2,500 for a weekend getaway to a resort she termed a networking retreat. I thought of Clara. I thought of the one solid, simple brown leather satchel I bought her for our 25th anniversary. She wept when I presented it to her. She carried that satchel until the leather split, and she cherished it until the day she passed. And this woman, this immature soul, was expending the price of a tractor on items to dazzle strangers she didn't even know. And Marcus was permitting her. He was encouraging her. I flipped the page, my stomach knotted a sour twist that made the whiskey burn sharper. The next section was about my son. Subject Marcus Thorne. Employment status. I read the first sentence and I had to set my whiskey glass down. Subject was terminated from his position as a junior asset advisor at Summit Financial 6 months ago. Date of termination June 15th, 6 months. He had been deceiving me for 6 months. Every phone conversation where he mentioned a hectic day at the firm, every time he said he was sealing a major transaction, every single word was a fabrication. I read on the reason for termination. Unauthorized high-stakes investments resulting in substantial client deficits. He wasn't just dismissed, he was discharged for cause. He was wagering with others' funds to attempt and cover the $76,000 his wife was spending on frivolities. I felt a wave of shame so profound it made me lightheaded, the room tilting slightly in the dim kitchen light. I funded that boy's advanced degree at Crestview University. I sat in the audience at his commencement, my chest swelled with pride. I thought I had nurtured a man who was wiser than me, superior to me. I hadn't. I had nurtured a fool. I had nurtured a reckless, dishonest offspring who had squandered a 6-figure position because he couldn't deny his wife. I took a swig. The whiskey scorched, but it didn't scorch as hot as the shame. I turned to the last page. It was a single sheet of paper. Current financial activities. Nadia's notes were concise, direct. Subjects Marcus and Lydia Thorne are currently in the final stages of an application for a home equity line of credit, or HELOC. Amount $200,000. Lender Summit Trust Bank. I furrowed my brow. A HELOC. How you have to possess equity in a house to obtain a HELOC. They had no equity. They hadn't remitted the mortgage in 3 months and the loan was 0 interest. They had only remitted fractions against the principal. And then I saw Nadia's final note. Application was submitted with forged documents of title indicating subjects are the full and unencumbered owners of the outskirts property. This is a clear case of loan fraud. The glass in my hand quivered. I stood up. I walked to the vault, pulled out my own dossier on the outskirts house. I looked at the original title, the one that listed Thorne Heritage Ventures LLC as the sole owner and lien holder. They weren't just defaulting. They weren't just deceiving about their occupations. My son and his wife were actively attempting to pilfer $200,000 from a bank by using my property as collateral. Property they knew deep down wasn't truly theirs. This wasn't a family quarrel anymore. This wasn't about wounded sentiments or a missed Christmas banquet. This was a crime, a federal crime. My thankless son wasn't just a fool, he was a felon, and he was utilizing my name, my legacy, my house to do it. The chilled lucidity returned sharper this time, like a blade's edge. I knew exactly what I had to do. I lifted the phone and called Harlan Jr. Harlan Jr., I said, my voice low and firm. It's worse than we thought. They're not just overdue. They're committing fraud. I want this halted, not tomorrow, not next week. I want it halted now. Harlan Jr. didn't call. 2 days later, a slender, professional-appearing young woman I'd never seen before rapped on my cottage door. She donned a crisp suit and didn't grin. Mr. Thorne, I am. This is from Mr. Thorne, Jr. She proffered a thick 9x12 manila envelope. No return address, just my name scrawled on the front. She pivoted and departed without another utterance. I closed the door, engaging the lock. I stood in my entryway for a moment, just gauging the envelope in my hand. It was heavy, heavy with verities I wasn't certain I desired to know. I went to the kitchen. I didn't brew coffee. I poured myself 2 fingers of whiskey. I don't imbibe often, but I had a feeling this was an occasion. I sat at my small kitchen table, the one I'd dined at for 35 years, and I opened the clasp. Inside was a professionally bound report. The cover read, Confidential Investigation Subjects, Marcus and Lydia Thorne Investigator Nadia Reed. I opened it. The first section was about Lydia. It was 7 pages long, complete with photographs. Nadia was adept. She was meticulous. I saw images of Lydia, not the beaming socialite she portrayed online. I saw her in her new luxury crossover parked outside upscale lounges in the town center. I saw her emerging from upscale boutiques carrying bags from high-end designers, from luxury outlets, from exclusive labels. Then came the credit card statements. Nadia had obtained them. I didn't inquire how. Premier card. A balance of $38,000. National Visa, $22,000. Boutique store card, $16,000, $76,000. $76,000 in debt just on her personal cards. I examined the charges. $5,500 for a handbag. $1,300 for a pair of designer heels I'd glimpsed in a catalog. $2,500 for a weekend getaway to a resort she termed a networking retreat. I thought of Clara. I thought of the one solid, simple brown leather satchel I bought her for our 25th anniversary. She wept when I presented it to her. She carried that satchel until the leather split, and she cherished it until the day she passed. And this woman, this immature soul, was expending the price of a tractor on items to dazzle strangers she didn't even know. And Marcus was permitting her. He was encouraging her. I flipped the page, my stomach knotted. The next section was about my son. Subject Marcus Thorne. Employment status. I read the first sentence and I had to set my whiskey glass down. Subject was terminated from his position as a junior asset advisor at Summit Financial 6 months ago. Date of termination June 15th, 6 months. He had been deceiving me for 6 months. Every phone conversation where he mentioned a hectic day at the firm. Every time he said he was sealing a major transaction, every single word was a fabrication. I read on the reason for termination. Unauthorized high-stakes investments resulting in substantial client deficits. He wasn't just dismissed. He was discharged for cause. He was wagering with others' funds to attempt and cover the $76,000 his wife was spending on frivolities. I felt a wave of shame so profound it made me lightheaded. I funded that boy's advanced degree at Crestview University. I sat in the audience at his commencement. My chest swelled with pride. I thought I had nurtured a man who was wiser than me, better than me. I hadn't. I had nurtured a fool. I had nurtured a reckless, dishonest offspring who had squandered his entire future because he couldn't deny his wife. I took a swig. The whiskey scorched, but it didn't scorch as hot as the shame. I turned to the last page. It was a single sheet of paper. Current financial activities. Nadia's notes were concise, direct. Subjects Marcus and Lydia Thorne are currently in the final stages of an application for a home equity line of credit or HELOC amount $200,000. Lender Summit Trust Bank. I furrowed my brow. A HELOC. how you have to possess equity in a house to obtain a HELOC. They had no equity. They hadn't remitted the mortgage in 3 months, and the loan was zero interest. They had only remitted fractions against the principal. And then I saw Nadia's final note. Application was submitted with forged documents of title indicating subjects are the full and unencumbered owners of the outskirts property. This is a clear case of loan fraud. The glass in my hand quivered. I stood up. I walked to the vault, pulled out my own dossier on the outskirts house. I looked at the original title, the one that listed Thorn Heritage Ventures LLC as the sole owner and lien holder. They weren't just defaulting, they weren't just deceiving about their occupations. My son and his wife were actively attempting to pilfer $200,000 from a bank by using my property as collateral. Property they knew deep down wasn't truly theirs. This wasn't a family quarrel anymore. This wasn't about wounded sentiments or a missed Christmas banquet. This was a crime, a federal crime. My thankless son wasn't just a fool, he was a felon. And he was utilizing my name, my legacy, my house to do it. The chilled lucidity returned sharper this time, like a blade's edge. I knew exactly what I had to do. I lifted the phone and called Harlan Jr. Harlan Jr., I said, my voice low and firm. It's worse than we thought. They're not just overdue, they're committing fraud. I want this halted, not tomorrow, not next week. I want it halted now. Ty. The thick manila envelope from Harlan Jr. arrived 2 days later, delivered by a quiet professional woman in a suit. I didn't open it immediately. I let it rest on my kitchen table while I brewed a pot of coffee. I sat down, opened the report, and skipped past the first section. I already knew about Lydia. I already knew about her $76,000 debt, her fabricated online presence. Her existence lived for social validation. She was a manifestation. I needed to know about the root. I flipped the page. Subject Marcus Thorn. Employment status. I read the first sentence, and I had to set my coffee mug down. The room felt abruptly very chilled, the air heavy with unspoken betrayals. Subject was terminated from his position as a junior asset advisor at Summit Financial 6 months ago. Date of termination, June 15th, 6 months. I read the date again, June 15th. He had been deceiving me for half a year. My mind flashed back through all our dialogues, all those brief, hurried calls. Sorry, Dad. I'm just sealing a major transaction. Things are frantic at the firm, Dad. The economy is unstable, but I'm handling. Every single word was a deception. He wasn't at the firm. He hadn't had a firm since early summer. I read the next line. Reason for termination: unauthorized high-stakes investments resulting in substantial client deficits. He wasn't just dismissed. He wasn't a casualty of reduction. He was discharged for cause for being imprudent. It all snapped into place sharp and agonizing. The $76,000 debt from Lydia, the $70,000 luxury crossover. He wasn't remunerating for it with his salary. He was remunerating for it by wagering with other people's funds, trying to strike one big win to cover the abyss his wife was excavating. And he lost. He lost grandly. He squandered a 6-figure position, a career I funded. I funded that boy's advanced degree at Crestview University. I sat in that sweltering packed hall, my chest swelled with pride, watching him traverse the stage. I thought I had nurtured a man who was wiser than me, superior to me. I hadn't. I had nurtured a fool. I had nurtured a reckless, dishonest offspring who had squandered his entire future because he couldn't tell his wife no. The shame I felt was so profound it made me dizzy. I took a breath. I thought that was the ultimate strike. I thought the report was complete. But there was one last page, a single sheet of paper. Current financial activities. Nadia's notes were concise, direct. Subjects Marcus and Lydia Thorn are currently in the final stages of an application for a home equity line of credit. Amount $200,000. Lender Summit Trust Bank. I furrowed my brow. A HELOC. That didn't compute. A home equity line of credit. You have to possess equity in a house to obtain a HELOC. You have to own something. They didn't. They hadn't remitted the mortgage in 3 months. The loan I granted them was zero interest, which meant almost every penny they had remitted went straight to the principal. But they hadn't remitted enough. They hadn't remitted anywhere near enough to have $200,000 in equity. I looked at the report, perplexed. How could they possibly obtain that loan? And then I saw it. Nadia's final note right at the bottom of the page. A sentence so chilled it froze the coffee in my mug. Application was submitted with forged documents of title indicating subjects are the full and unencumbered owners of the outskirts property. This is a clear case of loan fraud. The glass in my hand quivered. I set it down. Forged documents. I stood up. I walked to the vault hidden behind that modest Willow Creek Horizon print. I opened it. I pulled out my own dossier on the outskirts house. I looked at the original title, the title I had never ever granted him, the one that listed Thorn Heritage Ventures LLC as the sole owner and lien holder. He didn't just deceive me about his position. He didn't just default on his loan. He didn't just bar me from Christmas. My son, my only son. He went to a crook, paid him money, and created a fake document, a fake title. He was actively trying to pilfer $200,000 from a bank by using my property as collateral. This wasn't a family quarrel anymore. This wasn't about wounded sentiments. This wasn't about a missed dinner. This was a crime, a federal crime. He was going to pilfer my house, the house I acquired for him. He was going to leverage my legacy, my father's legacy, and run it into the ground, all to compensate for his wife's handbags and his own failure. The chilled lucidity returned sharper this time, like a blade's edge. He wasn't just a thankless fool. He wasn't just a coward. He was a felon. And he was utilizing my name, my legacy, my house to do it. I lifted the phone. I didn't waver. I didn't contemplate Christmas or Clara or the 9-year-old boy who gave me that coffee mug. That boy was vanished. I called Harlan Jr. He answered on the second ring. "Elias, did you get the Harlan Jr.?" I said. My voice was low. It was firm. It was the voice of a man who had just declared war. It's worse than we thought. They're not just overdue, they're committing fraud. They forged the title. They're trying to extract a loan against my property. I heard Harlan Jr. let out a long, slow whistle. "Elias, that's wire fraud, bank fraud. That's federal." "I know what it is." I said, "I want this halted. Not tomorrow, not next week. I want it halted now." Harlan Jr. Thorne's office is on the 25th floor of a steel tower in the town center. I parked my old Silverado in the subterranean garage right between a black luxury sedan and a red sports car. The attendant eyed my truck like it was an intruder until I handed him a $20 bill. Wealth alters how people perceive you. It's the initial lesson and the final. I rode the silent paneled elevator up. Harlan Jr. has been my attorney for 35 years. He's the son of my father's attorney. Our families intertwine. He's one of 2 individuals on earth who knows the man behind the mill uniform. When I entered his aid, a keen young woman didn't make me linger. "Mr. Thorne. Mr. Thorne Jr. is anticipating you." Harlan Jr. was standing by his window, a pane of glass, overlooking the town I owned fragments of. He's a tall man, always in an impeccable suit. He turned around, his expression somber. The bound report Nadia Reed had prepared was positioned in the center of his vast walnut desk. "Elias," he said. He didn't extend his hand. He just gestured to the report. "I've perused it twice. I still can't fathom it." I sat in one of the leather seats. It yielded under my weight with a soft sigh. I looked at the report, but I didn't need to peruse it again. The words were seared into my memory. Discharged. 76,000 forged documents. "He's my son Harlan Jr.," I said. My voice was hushed. "And he's a pilferer." Harlan Jr. seated opposite me. "He's more than that, Elias. A pilferer takes your wallet. Marcus and this woman, they are trying to pilfer your entire legacy. Bank fraud, wire fraud. This is federal time we're discussing." I nodded gradually. I looked out the window at the Willow Creek skyline. It was the same skyline from the modest print hanging in my cottage. Only this one was tangible. "They didn't just bar me from Christmas dinner, Harlan Jr.," I said, my voice as chilled and flat as the glass before me. "They're not just thankless. They're trying to pilfer $200,000 from a bank using my name as the weapon." Harlan Jr. leaned forward, clasping his hands. "So what's the maneuver?" "We have options. Option 1, I contact them. Right now. I inform them we know everything. We intimidate them straight. We manage it within the family. Perhaps they absorb the lesson. I nearly chuckled. Absorb the lesson, Harlan Jr. My son has been deceiving to my face for 6 months. His wife is expending money neither possesses. They're not youngsters who pilfered a treat. They're adults who attempted to commit a felony. They're beyond absorbing. Okay, Harlan Jr. said, his eyes narrowing. He recognized this facet of me. This was not Elias, the mill worker. This was Harlan Thorne's son. Option 2. We act on the default. I file the foreclosure notice today. It's pristine, it's swift. Your contract is unassailable. We reclaim the house. It's over in 30 days. Reclaim the house, I repeated. Yes, that was good. That was essential, but it wasn't sufficient. It felt incomplete. It felt like they were escaping lightly. And the fraud, I asked, the $200,000 loan. That's option 3, Harlan Jr. said. I make a call to the U.S. Attorney's Office. I present Nadia's findings, the forged title, the fraudulent application. They initiate an investigation. And Marcus and Lydia, they will very likely go to prison, Elias, for a long time. I sat there in that quiet, costly office. I thought about Marcus as a boy presenting me that world's best dad mug. I thought about him at his commencement, so full of promise. And then I thought about his voice on the phone. We're not expecting you, Dad. It's formal. The chills settled in. They had humiliated me. They had dismissed me as an unassuming poor old man, a load in embarrassment. They were planning to quaff champagne with Victor and Helena Langford chuckling about their beginner's chateau, a chateau they were trying to pilfer from me. They desired a formal Christmas. We'll do both, I said. Harlan Jr. raised an eyebrow. Both, Elias. If we go to the authorities, the foreclosure becomes part of a criminal proceeding. It gets complicated. No, I said, we do it my way. We do it in sequence. They think they're clever. Let's be cleverer. I leaned forward. The scheme was forming chilled and perfect in my mind. First, you do nothing about the fraud. Not yet. Let them think they're secure. Let them keep planning their formal Christmas with their fancy in-laws. And second, Harlan Jr. asked, a small perilous smile forming on his face. He was beginning to perceive it. Second, I said, you file the foreclosure. You dispatch the official notice of default and intent to foreclose. You dispatch it by certified mail return receipt requested. You do everything by the book, legal, unassailable. That's standard, Harlan Jr. said. But when I smiled, it wasn't a joyful smile. It was the smile of a man who had just selected his weapon. I want it delivered on December 22nd. Harlan Jr. this Friday. I want that certified mail slip to arrive right when Victor and Helena Langford are unpacking their bags. I want Lydia to have to sign for it while she's flaunting her new luxury crossover. I want them to open that legal envelope, the one from Thorne Heritage Ventures, right in the middle of their perfect formal holiday gathering. Harlan Jr. stared at me. Elias, that is cold-blooded. Is it? I asked. Is it colder than barring your own father from Christmas? Is it colder than forging a title to pilfer from him? No, I don't think so. I think it's just formal. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked down at the town below. My town. Dispatch the notice, Harlan Jr., let them panic. Let them spend their Christmas wondering who Thorne Heritage Ventures is. Let them realize the unassuming old mill worker is the one pulling the strings. And then after they've stewed in their own fear, then we'll converse with the U.S. Attorney. Harlan Jr. leaned back in his high-backed leather chair. The chair probably cost more than my first tractor. His office was silent, high above the town din. All you could hear was the faint, costly hum of the building's ventilation. So we have options, Harlan Jr. said. He steepled his fingers, looking at me over them. He wasn't my companion right now. He was my attorney. 2 primary paths, Elias, and they are very, very distinct. I just nodded. I waited. I was accustomed to waiting. My entire life had been about waiting. Waiting for my father's land to appreciate. Waiting for Marcus to mature. Waiting for the respect that never arrived. Option 1. Harlan Jr. said, his voice sharp and clear as the hammer. What your son and his wife have done is not a family blunder. It's not a misapprehension. It is a felony. Several felonies, actually. Forging a title of ownership, submitting a fraudulent loan application to a federally insured bank. Elias, this is wire fraud. This is bank fraud. This is grave. He paused, letting the words sink their weight, pressing on the air like an impending storm. I can lift that phone. He gestured to the sleek black device on his desk. And I can call a contact at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I send him Nadia's report, and this is over. They will be apprehended probably before the new year. I felt the air escape my lungs. Apprehended. My son Marcus in restraints. I saw a flash of him age 9 in his youth sports gear, so proud he'd scored. I saw him at his Crestview commencement waving at me from the stage. My son, a federal offender. Prison. Harlan Jr., I asked, my voice a whisper. Prison Elias. He said, his face unwavering. For a long time, they don't take this lightly. And given the evidence, Nadia's report is unassailable. They wouldn't just be accused, they would be convicted. I closed my eyes. I thought about Marcus in a cell. I thought about Lydia with her $76,000 debts in a prison garb. I thought about my granddaughter Alara. What would happen to Alara? But then I thought about the phone call. We're not expecting you, Dad. It's formal. I thought about the forged title. What's option 2? I asked, opening my eyes. Option 2 is the scalpel, Harlan Jr. said. We handle this on the civil side. We set the criminal fraud aside just for a moment. We focus entirely on the contract on the default. He tapped the navy vinyl folder on his desk, the one from my vault. Your agreement with Marcus, the private mortgage, is unassailable. You are the sole lien holder. He is 92 days in default. The acceleration clause is triggered. We don't have to alert him. We don't have to negotiate. We can simply enforce our legal right. We file for foreclosure. We reclaim the house. Reclaim the house, I repeated. It's pristine. Harlan Jr. said it's swift. Relatively, it's commerce. He defaulted on a loan. The lender repossesses the collateral. It transpires every day. He and Lydia would be out in 30 days. They'd be devastated financially, their credit demolished, but they wouldn't be in prison. It would be a very, very harsh lesson. I leaned back in the soft leather chair. Prison or foreclosure, the hammer or the scalpel. One was justice. The other was a lesson. I thought about Marcus. I thought about his shame, his frailty, his constant, desperate need to impress those people. If I sent him to prison, I would be terminating his life. But if I just reclaimed the house, was that enough? They would be humiliated. Yes. They would be destitute. Yes. But would they comprehend, or would they just see it as a business deal gone awry? Would they see Thorn Heritage Ventures as just another impersonal bank that took their house? They wouldn't connect it to me. They wouldn't connect it to the Christmas dinner. They wouldn't understand the disrespect. They would just be irate, and they would proceed. They wouldn't learn a thing. They would just find someone else to exploit. No, neither option was correct. Not on its own. I looked out the window down at the vehicles moving like tiny, silent insects on the streets below. We're not going to the authorities, I said. Harlan Jr. raised an eyebrow. So foreclosure it is. I'll have my team draft the no, I said, interrupting him. Not just foreclosure. We're going to do this my way. We're going to do it in sequence. I turned from the window to face him. The chilled lucidity was back. It was perfect. You're not calling the U.S. attorney. Not yet. Let them think they're secure. Let them keep trying to get that fraudulent loan. Let them keep planning their formal Christmas with their fancy in-laws. And Harlan Jr. asked. He was leaning forward now, sensing the shift. And I said, you are going to file the foreclosure. You're going to dispatch the official notice of default and intent to foreclose. You will dispatch it by certified mail return receipt requested. You will do everything by the book, legal, perfect, unassailable. That's standard procedure, Elias. I can have it dispatched today. They'll get it Monday. No. I held up my hand. The timing is everything. It's not standard procedure. It's a performance. Harlan Jr. furrowed his brow. What are you discussing? I walked back to the desk and leaned on it with both hands. I don't want it dispatched today. I want you to prepare the papers now, but you will hold them. You will dispatch that notice so that it is delivered on Friday, December 22nd. Harlan Jr.'s eyes widened. Elias, that's That's 2 days before Christmas Eve. I know exactly what day it is, I said. I want that certified mail carrier walking up that sweeping driveway while Victor and Helena Langford are unpacking their bags in my guest suite. I want Lydia to have to take a break from flaunting her new luxury crossover to sign for it. I want them to open that legal envelope, the one from Thorn Heritage Ventures, right in the middle of their perfect formal holiday. Harlan Jr. just stared at me. The silence in the office was absolute. I want them to panic. I continued, my voice low and firm. I want them to spend their Christmas weekend calling every attorney in Willow Creek. I want them to be terrified trying to figure out who this company is that suddenly owns their $1.2 million house. I want Marcus to look at his wife's $76,000 debt, and I want him to look at his formal in-laws, and I want him to realize in that moment that he has lost everything. Harlan Jr. let out a long, slow breath. Elias. That is cold-blooded. I straightened up. I walked to the door. I put my hand on the polished brass handle. Is it Harlan Jr.? I asked, looking back at him. Is it colder than telling your own father he's not welcome at Christmas because you're ashamed of him? Is it colder than forging a title to pilfer his property, a property he gave you out of love? I opened the door. No, I don't think it's cold-blooded. I think it's just formal. Dispatch the notice. Let them sweat. Let them wonder. And then after they've stewed in their own fear after they've had their Christmas from hell, then we'll call the U.S. attorney about the fraud. I sat there in that quiet, costly office, the leather of the chair cool against my back. Harlan Jr. watched me, his face impassive, awaiting my judgment. The hammer or the scalpel, prison or foreclosure. I thought about Marcus, not the 44-year-old fool who forged documents, but the 9-year-old boy who gave me that coffee mug. The boy I took hiking in the hills. The boy I taught to drive a tractor. I saw his face, all scratched up, tears streaming down his cheeks after he stumbled. I saw myself lifting him up, brushing him off, telling him, "You're okay, son. You're strong." What would prison do to him? It would shatter him. It would terminate him. And Alara, my granddaughter, what would happen to her if both her parents were in prison? She would be an orphan of her parents' avarice. I couldn't do that to her. I couldn't do that to Clara's grandchild. So Harlan Jr. said softly, "Foreclosure it is. The scalpel. I'll have my team draft the notice. We can have it served by Monday." I looked up from my hands. I looked at Harlan Jr. No. He raised an eyebrow. "No, Elias. You can't just let them." "No, not just foreclosure," I said. That's not enough. That's not the lesson." Harlan Jr. leaned back. "I'm not following. What's the lesson?" "Think about it, Harlan Jr.," I said, leaning forward. "We file for foreclosure. A marshal serves them papers from Thorn Heritage Ventures, LLC. What transpires? They panic. They get irate. They curse some impersonal company in Nevada. They'll call an attorney, declare insolvency. They'll be humiliated. Yes, but they won't comprehend. Comprehend what? They won't comprehend why it transpired. They won't connect it to that phone call. They won't connect it to the disrespect. They'll just think they had ill fortune. They'll think the world is unjust. They will learn nothing. They will just proceed and find someone else to exploit. My son and his wife, they dismissed me. They called me not refined. They thought I was an unassuming poor old man, a load to be concealed away. They're about to have their formal Christmas with Victor and Helena Langford quaffing fine wine and chuckling in a house they pilfered from me. If I just reclaim the house, they'll call me weeping, and I'll still just be the old mill worker. They won't get it. I stood up and walked to the wall of glass. I looked down at the town below. My town. "No," I said again. My voice was different now. It was chilled. It was the voice of the man who built this. The voice of Harlan Thorne's son. We're going to do both, but we're going to do it my way. We're going to do it in sequence. Harlan Jr. was silent. He was listening. First I said, turning to face him, "You are not to call the U.S. attorney. Not yet. You are not to breathe a word of this fraud to anyone. Let them think they're secure. Let them keep trying to get that fraudulent $200,000 loan. Let them keep planning their formal Christmas with their fancy in-laws." And second, Harlan Jr. asked, Second, I said, you will file the foreclosure. You will dispatch the official notice of default and intent to foreclose. You will do everything by the book. Legal, unassailable, certified mail return receipt requested. That's standard procedure, Elias. I can have it dispatched today. They'll get it Monday. No. I held up my hand. The timing is everything. It's not standard procedure. It's a performance. Harlan Jr. frowned. What are you talking about? I walked back to the desk and leaned on it with both hands. I don't want it dispatched today. I want you to prepare the papers now, but you will hold them. You will dispatch that notice so that it is delivered on Friday, December 22nd. Harlan Jr.'s eyes widened. Elias, that's 2 days before Christmas Eve. I know exactly what day it is, I said. I want that certified mail carrier walking up that sweeping driveway while Victor and Helena Langford are unpacking their bags in my guest suite. I want Lydia to have to take a break from flaunting her new luxury crossover to sign for it. I want them to open that legal envelope, the one from Thorn Heritage Ventures, right in the middle of their perfect formal holiday gathering. Harlan Jr. just stared at me. The silence in the office was absolute. I want them to panic. I continued, my voice low and firm. I want them to spend their Christmas weekend calling every attorney in Willow Creek. I want them to be terrified trying to figure out who this company is that suddenly owns their $1.2 million house. I want Marcus to look at his wife's $76,000 debt, and I want him to look at his formal in-laws, and I want him to realize in that moment that he has lost everything. Harlan Jr. let out a long, slow breath. Elias, that is cold-blooded. I straightened up. I walked to the door. I put my hand on the polished brass handle. Is it Harlan Jr.? I asked, looking back at him. Is it colder than telling your own father he's not welcome at Christmas because you're ashamed of him? Is it colder than forging a title to pilfer his property? A property he gave you out of love. I opened the door. No, I don't think it's cold-blooded. I think it's just formal. Dispatch the notice. Let them sweat. Let them wonder. And then after they've stewed in their own fear, after they've had their Christmas from hell, then we'll call the U.S. attorney about the fraud. It was December 22nd. The sun was bright over Willow Creek, but it was chilled. The kind of chill that penetrates your bones, the kind that reminds you you're isolated. My cottage was quiet. Too quiet. Usually this time of year, Clara would have the radio playing. Old Christmas hymns, classic crooners, the aroma of baking apple pie cinnamon would fill this whole modest cottage. She would be humming wrapping presents, creating a beautiful, joyful disarray. This was the 12th Christmas without her. But it felt like the first. I poured myself a cup of black coffee. The old brewmaster machine gurgled in complaint. I sat at my kitchen table, the one I'd dined at for 35 years. I just listened. Listened to the silence. Listened to the sound of a neighbor's radio through the thin wall. I checked the clock on the wall. 11:30 a.m. Right now, a delivery carrier was walking up that long, sweeping driveway in the outskirts. Right now, he was walking past the $70,000 luxury crossover, the one I was paying for. He was ringing the bell on the $1.2 million house. My house. I wondered who would answer. Would it be Lydia, my daughter-in-law? She'd probably be vexed, irritated to be disturbed. She'd be busy preparing for her formal Christmas busy, ensuring her attire was impeccable for her mother Helena. Or maybe Marcus would answer, my son. He'd probably sign for the letter without even glancing, too distracted. Too busy being the magnate in the grand house, too busy to notice the name on the return address, Thorn Heritage Ventures, LLC. He wouldn't know that name. He was too arrogant to ever inquire. He just thought it was some impersonal firm in Nevada. I sipped my coffee. It was chilled. They were all there now. Victor and Helena Langford had driven in from the coast. They'd be unpacking in my guest suite. They'd be quaffing my son's expensive champagne, or maybe my expensive champagne. Who knew they'd be surveying that beginner's chateau and feeling so proud of their daughter, so impressed with my son, the one who had transcended his simple millworker father. I looked at Clara's photograph on the table. She was smiling at me. He barred me, Clara, I whispered to the empty room. Our boy, he didn't want me there, said I wasn't refined enough. Me, the man who paid for every stone in that house. For a moment, the chilled anger I'd felt in Harlan Jr.'s office was gone. All I felt was a deep, aching sorrow. This wasn't what we envisioned. We toiled our whole lives. My father acquired that earth. I built on it. I did it all for him, for Marcus, to grant him the choices we never had. I granted him the finest education. I granted him a foundation, and he used that foundation to construct a life where I wasn't welcome. He used my strength to finance his own weakness. He was so desperate to be one of them, to be like Lydia and her stiff, judgmental parents, that he forgot who he was. He forgot he was a thorn. He forgot where he came from. My phone buzzed on the table. My heart leaped. I thought it was Harlan Jr. I thought it's done, but it wasn't. It was a text message from Alara, my granddaughter. It was a picture of her 12 years old standing in front of their giant, perfect Christmas tree. She was holding up a sketch. It was a picture of the three of us, her, me, and Marcus. We were all holding hands. The text underneath read, "Merry Christmas, Grandpa. Wish you were here." I felt my eyes sting. I hadn't anticipated that. I felt the tears well up hot and sudden. She was just a young girl. She was innocent in all this. She didn't know her father was a pilferer. She didn't know her mother was a fraud. She just knew her grandpa wasn't coming for Christmas. For a second, I almost reached for the phone. I almost called Harlan Jr. "Stop it. Stop the letter. It's a mistake. He's my son." I almost did. But then I looked at the picture again. I looked at Alara's smile. What kind of life was she going to have with them? A life of deceptions. A life built on debt and deceit. A life where you learn to value $70,000 vehicles and designer handbags, but not the people who love you. What kind of man was Marcus going to raise her to respect? What kind of woman would Lydia teach her to become? My resolve hardened. The tears dried. I wasn't doing this to Marcus. I was doing this for Alara. I was halting the decay before it consumed her too. I was terminating the deceptions. I was cleansing the house. My house. I put the phone down. I didn't reply to her text. Not yet. My phone buzzed again. This time I knew who it was. I picked it up. A new text message from Harlan Jr. It was short. It was simple. It was final. Delivery confirmed. 11:42 a.m., signed for by L. Thorne. Lydia. She had signed for it herself. I looked at Clara's photograph. I looked at Alara's text. The first domino just fell. "Clara," I whispered. I sipped my chilled coffee. The wait was over. The next phase had begun. Now I just had to wait for them to read the letter. I sat in my small kitchen. It was 11:45 a.m. on Friday, December 22nd. The coffee in my world's best dad mug was chilled, but I didn't notice. I was staring at my phone at the text message that had come in 3 minutes ago. It was from Harlan Jr. Delivery confirmed. 11:42 a.m. Signed for by L. Thorne. That was it. The first domino had been pushed. The fuse was ignited. I closed my eyes. I didn't need Nadia's surveillance or Harlan Jr.'s reports to know exactly what was transpiring in that house right now. I'd been there. I knew the actors. I could see the whole pathetic, ugly scene unfolding in my mind as clearly as if I were perched in the corner, the air thick with their self-satisfaction. Right now, at 11:42 a.m., the $1.2 million house I owned was filled with the scent of expensive artificial evergreen from a 12-foot Christmas tree. Marcus and Lydia wouldn't know how to manage a real one. They'd be playing music. Something I didn't recognize, thin and digital, trying to sound cultured. And they would be there, Victor and Helena Langford. Lydia's parents arriving from the coast, reeking of inherited wealth and criticism. I could see Victor, a tall, lean man who always looked like he was detecting something foul. He'd be holding a glass of bourbon at 11:42 in the morning, mind you, swirling the ice, gazing out the large bay window. Helena would be perched on the edge of that cream divan I paid for, wearing some kind of ivory wool sweater that probably cost $1,500. She'd be sipping herbal infusion, her pinky extended. My son Marcus would be hovering, anxious, laughing, too boisterously desperate for their endorsement. He'd be refilling Victor's glass, asking Helena if she was comfortable playing the role of the triumphant son-in-law. And Lydia, she'd be the sovereign reigning in her new luxury crossover, showcasing the house, basking in her parents' acclaim. I could hear their voices sharp and brittle as frost. "It's just splendid, Marcus," Helena would say, her tone dripping with artificial sweetness. "This house, this enclave you've truly transcended." Transcended. That's the word she'd use. Transcended from me. Transcended from the hills. Transcended from being the son of a mill worker. Absolutely, Victor would add, slapping Marcus on the shoulder a bit too forcefully. "Solid structure on this place. Wise choice. You're fortunate you escaped that. Well, you know a man's got to look ahead, not behind. Can't be burdened by the past." Past. That's what I was to them. Past. Something to be forgotten. "Oh, Father, cease." Lydia would laugh, that shrill sound that always grated my nerves. "You'll make him flush. But you're correct. We're forging our own heritage now, aren't we, darling, and Marcus, my son?" He'd just nod. He'd just grin, his face reddened, looking so proud that these two pompous strutters approved of him. And right then, right in the middle of that self-congratulation ding-dong, I could envision the chime echoing through that vast, empty stone entryway. Lydia would frown. She wasn't anticipating anyone, and disruption to her display. "Who in the world is that?" She'd snap. "Marcus. Can you get it?" "The staff is off today." Marcus would hurry to the door, he'd open it, and there he'd be, a man just like I used to be, a delivery service employee holding a certified mail envelope and a digital scanner. Letter for L. Thorne. "Need a signature." Marcus would call for her. Annoyed. "Lydia. It's for you. Certified." Lydia would stride over her heels, clacking on that costly floor. She'd snatch the scanner from the carrier sign L. Thorne with a flourish and grab the green and white envelope. She'd slam the door in the man's face before he could even say, "Have a nice day." I could see her striding back to the living room, ripping it open. She wouldn't be concerned. She'd just be irritated. She'd extract the papers, legal papers, thick official. I could see her scanning the first page, her perfectly groomed finger running across the text. "Thorne Heritage Ventures, LLC versus Marcus Thorne and Lydia Thorne." She'd laugh. A short, perplexed, haughty laugh. "Marcus, look at this. It's absurd. Some kind of spam mail. It looks so official." Marcus would take it from her. He'd be skimming, his brow creased. He wouldn't comprehend. Thorne Heritage. What, I've never heard of them. "It's probably a scam, darling. They're just trying to intimidate us." This is the part I relished the most. Their haughtiness, their blindness. They were so close to securing that fraudulent $200,000 loan. They were so busy enacting the part of the affluent elite that they couldn't imagine this was genuine. They thought they were invulnerable. They thought they were the most astute people in the room. To them, Thorne Heritage was just an error, a misprint, a low-tier opportunist trying to run a con. They would never connect that name to the unassuming retired mill worker they just barred from Christmas. Why would they? They never asked me a single question about my life, my enterprise, or my father. They just saw the old truck and the modest cottage. "What is it?" dear Helena would ask, not really intrigued. "Oh, nothing," Lydia would say, taking the papers back from Marcus. "Just some foolish legal rubbish. They probably sent it to the wrong address." The incompetence. And Victor would chuckle. "That's why you have attorney's son to handle the riffraff. You get to a certain tier, the leeches emerge from the shadows. Just discard it." "You're right, Father," Lydia would say. And I could see her. I could see her clearly. She'd crumple up that envelope. She'd crumple up the notice of default, the intent to foreclose, the 30-day warning, the legal explosive that would shatter their entire world. She'd walk over to the kitchen and she'd toss it into the stainless trash bin right on top of the champagne cork and the empty confection boxes. She'd wipe her hands as if she'd touched something filthy. She'd walk back to the living room, pick up her champagne glass, and the display would continue. "Now, where were we, Father? You were telling us about the trip to the mountains. Do you think we should go in February?" I opened my eyes. I was back in my kitchen. The coffee was gone. I looked at the text from Harlan Jr. Delivery confirmed. 11:42 a.m., signed for by L. Thorne. I smiled. The explosive was in the house. They had signed for it and they had just thrown it in the trash, too haughty to even read the warning label. They were going to spend the next 2 days celebrating. They'd quaff their fine wine. They'd consume their formal dinner. They'd chuckle about how they'd transcended their past. They would open their presents oblivious. But that letter was sitting there waiting. And on December 26th, when the banks reopened, the real detonation would happen. The accounts would be frozen. The credit would be severed. The phone would start ringing, and they would finally know the name Thorn Heritage Ventures. It's December 26th, the day after. The banks are open. The law offices are open. The great grinding wheels of consequence are finally turning. I spent Christmas Day alone. It was quiet. For the first time in 12 years, it wasn't melancholy. It was just serene. I woke up early, brewed myself a cup of coffee, and sat by the window watching the few vehicles that passed on the empty lane. There was no giant pile of gifts, no sound of a 12-year-old girl laughing, no aroma of Clara's apple pie. It was just me and the stillness. Around 10 o'clock, I put on my one good suit, the dark blue one I reserved for memorials and ceremonies. I got in my old Silverado. The engine started on the first turn, a small Christmas gift from the truck. I drove to the burial ground. The air was crisp and brittle, the sky a bright cloudless azure. I walked across the frosted turf to her. Clara Thorn, beloved wife and mother, 1956 to 2013. I had brought a single perfect white lily. I brushed some frost off the top of the headstone and laid the lily down. "Merry Christmas." "Darling," I whispered, my breath plumed in the chilled air. I stood there for a long time. I told her everything. I told her about the phone call. I told her about the missed remittances. I told her about the luxury crossover and the forged title and the $76,000 handbags. I told her about the formal Christmas I wasn't invited to. "I know," I said to the chilled stone. "I know he's our son, our boy. But he's lost Clara. He's lost in their world. He's drowning in their deceptions. And I had to halt it. I had to let him feel the gravity. You always said I was too lenient on him. You always said I protected him too much." I sighed a long, slow breath. "Well, I'm not protecting him anymore. I'm doing it the hard way, the way my father taught me, the way you would have." I felt a strange peace settle over me. Not happiness, not joy, just stillness. The feeling of a thing that is finished. The feeling of a hard decision made a heavy tool set down. I had set the pieces on the board. The game was already over. They just didn't know it yet. I spent the rest of the day in my cottage. I watched an old monochrome film. I read a book. I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. Today is December 26th, the day after. The banks are open. The law offices are open. The system is awakening. I'm sitting at my kitchen table sipping my coffee from the world's best dad mug. My phone is on the table in front of me. It's been silent for 3 days. No calls from Marcus. No text. They've been busy celebrating. They've been quaffing their champagne oblivious in my house. They've been posting pictures of their perfect family Christmas. They have no idea. I know Harlan Jr. filed the last of the paperwork this morning. The call to the U.S. Attorney's Office about the fraud. The call to Summit Trust Bank informing them the title they had on file was a forgery. The calls to freeze their accounts. The storm is here. I take a sip of coffee. Any minute now. The phone is going to ring, and the peace I'm feeling. It's about to be replaced by the most formal conversation of my entire life. The phone screamed a loud, shrill ring that shattered the quiet. It made me jump, spilling hot coffee on my hand. I didn't even flinch. I looked at the screen. Marcus. I let it ring. Once, twice, a third time. I wanted him to wait. I wanted him to feel that first jolt of pure, chilled panic. On the fourth ring, I picked up. I held the phone to my ear. I said nothing. "Dad? Oh, thank God. Dad, are you there?" His voice was a complete stranger's. It was high-pitched, cracking, breathless. It was the voice of a cornered animal. "Hello, son." I said my voice was calm. "Dad, something's wrong. Something is terribly wrong. I need your help." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "What's wrong, Marcus?" It's It's the accounts, Dad. They're frozen. All of them. He was almost sobbing. Lydia. Lydia tried to make the payment on the luxury crossover this morning, and the card was declined. Declined. Dad. She's hysterical. I went to the ATM. My card was invalid. I called the bank. They said all my accounts are frozen, pending a fraud investigation. I could hear Lydia screaming in the background, not words, just a raw animal sound of rage. Fraud. I said, letting the word hang in the air. That sounds serious, Marcus. What did you do? I didn't do anything, he shrieked. It's not me, it's them. It's that company that scam company from the letter, the one we threw away. They're trying to ruin me, Dad. They told the bank I was committing fraud. They're trying to take the house. They're trying to ruin us. I let him finish. I let all that panic and fear pour out of the phone. What company was that, son? I asked. I don't recall you mentioning a company. Thorn Heritage Ventures, he shouted, his voice cracking on the last word. Thorn Heritage Ventures, LLC. Some parasite bottom feeder. They're ruining my life, Dad. You have to call them. You have to do something. I set my coffee mug down. I let the silence stretch. 1 second, 2, 5. I could hear his desperate, ragged breathing. Ah, I said. My voice was chilled clear and very, very calm. That one, yes, that one. Do you know them? Can you help? That's my company's son. The silence on the other end was absolute. It was so complete. I could suddenly hear the ticking of the clock on my wall. I heard Marcus's sharp, panicked intake of breath. I heard Lydia stop screaming. I heard the entire $1.2 million house fall silent. What Marcus's voice was no longer a shout. It was a tiny, broken whisper. What did you say? I said, I repeated, enunciating every word. That's my company, Thorn Heritage Ventures, LLC, founded by my father, Harlan Thorn, in 1960. It's been my primary enterprise for 42 years. No, that's impossible, he stammered. You're a mill worker. You live in that cottage. I was a mill worker, Marcus. It was a good, honest job. It kept me grounded. It was a hell of a good cover. But it wasn't what paid for your Crestview advanced degree. It wasn't what paid for your first dwelling. And it wasn't what bought your $1.2 million house 6 years ago. I heard a small sound like a gasp. The house. Yes, the house. Marcus. You were rejected by 3 lenders. Remember, you were drowning in debt from the nuptials. You came to me terrified Lydia would leave you if you couldn't give her this formal life. So I bought the house cash, and to teach you responsibility, to let you feel like you'd earned it, I became your lender. I set up a private mortgage just for you. 0% interest, Marcus. A gift. All you had to do was pay. I did. I paid. I always paid. No, son. You didn't. I said, you stopped paying 92 days ago. You missed October. You missed November. You missed December. You defaulted on your loan. You defaulted on me. It was a mistake. I was just tight on cash, Dad. I was going to catch up, I swear. Tight on cash. I let out that short, bitter laugh. It had no humor in it. Were you tight on cash last week when you bought Lydia a $70,000 luxury crossover? Were you tight on cash when you were posting pictures of her $1,000 handbags? How do you know about that? I also know, I continued, my voice like a hammer hitting a nail, that you were discharged 6 months ago. You lost your position at Summit Financial for wagering with client money. You've been deceiving me. You've been deceiving your wife. You've been deceiving everyone. You're destitute. You're living on vapor, expending money you don't have. And you had the nerve to call me your father, the man who owns the roof over your head, and tell me I wasn't refined enough for your Christmas. Dad, please. I can fix this. No, you can't, Marcus, because it gets worse. You didn't just deceive. You didn't just default. You committed a crime. No, I didn't. I know about the HELOC application, Marcus, $200,000. I know about the forged title of ownership. You tried to use my property, my name, my legacy as collateral to pilfer from a federal bank. That's called fraud, son. That's called prison time. I heard a crash. It sounded like the phone being dropped or thrown. Then I heard Lydia's voice. It wasn't the polished, sweet tone she used with her parents. It was a raw, hysterical shriek. You, you old wretch, you did this. You tricked us. You set us up. You sat there in your dingy little cottage and pretended to be this poor, pathetic old mill worker. You're a fiend. Hello, Lydia. I said, my voice just as calm as before. No, I didn't trick you. I just stayed silent. I gave you the space to show me exactly who you are. And you did. You showed me you're a pilferer living on $76,000 of credit card debt you can't pay. You showed me you're a deception. You can't do this to us. It's our house. Marcus, tell him. Marcus, actually, Lydia, it's my house, and you have 30 days to get out. The foreclosure notice you signed for and threw in the trash was very clear. 30 days. I'd start packing if I were you. I'm sure your parents will have plenty of room for you in their house on the coast. My parents? Oh, yes. I almost forgot I said savoring this part. Since they seem to be co-signers on some of your fraudulent credit applications, and since they were in the house when you discussed the fraud, I imagine the federal investigators will want to talk to them too. They're part of the history now. I'll sue you. I'll tell everyone what you did. I'll ruin you. You do that, Lydia. You go right ahead and tell everyone. Tell them how your 68-year-old mill worker father-in-law, the one you were too embarrassed to have for Christmas, owns your house, your vehicle, and your entire pathetic existence. You go right ahead and tell them that. I heard a sob, a broken, defeated sound. Then Marcus, fumbling, got back on the phone. Dad, please don't do this. It's Christmas. What about Alara? Think about Alara. You should have thought about Alara before you became a felon. Marcus, you should have thought about her before you disrespected your father. You said you weren't expecting me for Christmas. Don't worry, son. I won't be coming. You have 30 days. I hung up the phone. I sat in the silence of my cottage. The clock on the wall was ticking. Tick, tock. My phone lit up. Marcus. I silenced it. It lit up again. Lydia. I silenced it again. Marcus. Again. Unknown number. That would be Helena or Victor. It kept lighting up, vibrating on the table, a frantic, desperate dance. 1-210-2069 missed calls. I picked up my chilled cup of coffee. I looked at the photograph of Clara. I'm sorry it came to this, darling, I whispered. But the boy needed to learn. I took a sip. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I felt completely and totally at peace. I hung up the phone. I sat there in the silence of my cottage. The clock on the wall was ticking. Tick-tock. My phone sitting on the kitchen table lit up. The screen flashed. Marcus. I watched it ring once, twice. It went to voicemail. A second later, it lit up again. Lydia. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. It lit up again. Marcus. Then again, an unknown number. That would be Helena or Victor. It lit up again. Marcus. Lydia. Marcus. Marcus. It was vibrating on the cheap wood, a frantic, desperate dance. It was the sound of a formal life collapsing. 1-2-10-2069 missed calls. I picked up the phone. I looked at the screen at the list of their names, one after another, a testament to their panic. I pressed the button on the side. The screen went black. The ringing stopped. The buzzing stopped. I picked up my chilled cup of coffee. I looked at the photograph of Clara. I'm sorry it came to this, darling, I whispered, but the boy needed to learn. I took a sip, and for the first time in a very, very long time, I felt completely and totally at peace. 1 year later, the house in the outskirts is gone. I sold it. I sold it swiftly, and I sold it for cash. The Stone Beginner's Chateau is just a memory. I'm not in my modest cottage anymore. I'm sitting on a bench in a new structure. It's luminous. The walls are adorned with art crafted by children. I can hear them giggling in the adjacent room, the sound echoing off the fresh floors. This is the Thorn Community Hub in the heart of the hills. The Hamlet I Never Abandoned. The Hamlet we never abandoned. My father's legacy constructed with the money from the house. Marcus and Lydia are gone too. Divorced, their perfect existence shattered into 1,000 fragments. Lydia took a plea agreement. She's working in a cafe in the town center serving espressos to the same women she used to try to impress. Insolvent, devastated. Marcus, my son. He's facing federal fraud charges. The forged title was the end. His trial is next month. He will likely go to prison. He lost everything. Grandpa. I look up. Alora is running toward me, her school satchel bouncing. She resides with me now. After the apprehension after the divorce, the court found 2 working-class felons unfit. They granted custody to the retired mill worker. She leaps into my arms, and I embrace her tight. She smells like markers and outdoor soil. I've got something for you, I say. I reach into my bag, the same old canvas one I've always carried. I pull out a box. It's the Galactic Voyager probe, the one I placed back on the shelf last year. I went back and acquired it. Her eyes widen. Grandpa, you got it. She rips the box open, her small hands trembling with excitement. I watch her, my heart brimming, Marcus and Lydia. They were so busy forging their own heritage, they didn't realize they were just part of mine. This right here, I say, tapping the new sign on the wall that reads, The Thorn Legacy Hub. This is the Thorn Legacy Ilara. I point to her holding the probe, her eyes full of wonder. And so are you. Now let's go home. I'll prepare us some supper. I smile. Here is the lesson learned from the story. This story teaches us a powerful lesson. True wealth is not measured by the vehicle you drive or the house you live in, but by the dignity, respect, and honesty you uphold. Greed and arrogance built on a foundation of lies are fragile. They blind people like Marcus and Lydia to the real value and strength of those they underestimate. Elias, the simple mill worker, proved that quiet strength, patience, and integrity are the real legacy. In the end, respect cannot be bought or faked. It must be earned, and those who trade it for status will ultimately lose everything. What would you have done if you were in Elias's position?